Chapter number 13. Why do we fall in? Activity 1. We have all heard of the earthquakes in Bhuj, Latur, Kashmir, etc. We have learned that cell is the basic unit of organizations. Cells are made of a variety of chemical substances, e.g. proteins, carbohydrates, fats or lipids, and so on. Although the pictures are seen quite static, actually living cell is a dynamic place. Something or the other is always happening. Cells move from place to place. Even in cells that do not move, repair is going on. New cells are being made in our organs or tissues. There are various specialized activities going on. Heart is beating, lungs are breathing, kidney is filtering urine, brain is thinking. These activities are interconnected. For example, if the kidneys are not filtering urine, poisonous substances will accumulated, and the brain will not be able to think properly. For all these activities, energy and raw material are required. In other words, food is a necessity for tissues and cell functions. Anything that prevents a proper function of tissues and cells will lead to improper functioning of the body. Health and its failure. Health and its failure. The significance of health. The word health is used quite frequency. It implies the idea of being well. We can think of this well-being as effective functioning. Health is a state of being well enough to function well physically, mentally, and socially. Personal and community issues both matter for health. If health means a state of physical, mental, and social well-being, it cannot to achieve it. It cannot be achieved internally on our own. The health of all organizations depends on their surroundings or their environment. The environment includes the physical environment. Therefore, health is at risk in a cyclone. Also, human beings live in societies. Therefore, our social environment is an important factor in our individual health. We live in villages, towns, or cities. In such places, or our physical environment is even decided by our social environment. If there is a great deal of garbage or open drain water laying stagnant around where we live, the possibility of pure health increases. Hence, public cleanliness is important for individual health. Activity 2. Note down the promises made by your local authority. We need food for health, which is earned by doing work. Therefore, opportunity to do work has to be available. Hence, good economic conditions and jobs are essential for individual health. We need to be happy, to be truly healthy. If we misbehave each other and are afraid of each other, we cannot be happy or healthy. Social equality and harmony are therefore essential for individual health. We can think of many such other examples of connections between individual health and community issues. Distinction between healthy and disease-free. The word disease is actually self-explanatory. We can think of it as disturbed. Is disease literally means being uncomfortable. However, it is used in a more limited meaning. We talk of disease when a specific and particular cause for discomfort is found. This does not mean that we have to know the absolute final cause. We can say without knowing exactly what has caused the loose motions. Someone is suffering from diarrhea, so it is possible to be in poor health without actually suffering from a particular disease. Not being diseased is not the same as being healthy. Good health for a musician may mean having enough breathing capacity in each by her lungs to control the notes for his her flute. On the other hand, good health for a dancer may mean being able to stretch his body into difficult but graceful positions to get the opportunity to release the unique potential in all of us is also essential for real health. So we can be in poor health without an fuel disease. That is why when we think about health, we think about societies and communities, whereas when we think about disease, we think about individual suffers. Disease and its causes. What does disease look like? Let us now let us now think a little more about disease. There are many tissues in the body. These tissues make up physiological systems or organ systems that carry out different body functions. Each of the organ systems has specific organs as its parts, and it performs particular functions. For example, the digestive system has the stomach and intestines, and it helps to digest food. Stomach and digest food. The musculoskeletal system, which consists of bones and muscles, holds the body parts together and helps in body motion. When there is a disease, either the functioning of one or more systems of the body will change for the worse. These changes create symptoms and signs of disease. Symptoms of disease make us feel as being wrong. So if we have a headache, lose motions, cough, wound with pus, these are all symptoms. These may indicate a disease, but they don't indicate what the disease is. For example, a headache may be just due to stress, or very rarely due to meningitis, or any one of a dozen different diseases. Signs of a disease are what doctors will look for on the basis of the symptoms. Signs will give a little more definite indication of a particular disease. Doctors will also get laboratory tests done to pinpoint the disease further. Acute and chronic disease. The manifestation of disease will be different depending on many factors. Some diseases remain for only very short periods of time and are called acute diseases. We all know that the common cold lasts only a few days. Other diseases can last for a long time, even as much as a lifetime, and are called chronic diseases. For example, the infection causing elephantiasis, which is very common in some parts of India. Another example is asthma. Chronic disease and poor health. Acute and chronic diseases have different effects on our health. Any disease that causes improper functioning of some part of the body will also affect our health. This is because all functions of the body are necessary for being healthy. An acute disease which is over very soon will not have time to cause serious effects on general health, while a chronic disease will do so. Think about a cough and cold from which all of us suffer from time to time. Most of us become well within a week or so, and this cause no lasting effects on our health. But if we get infected with a chronic disease like tuberculosis of the lungs, then being ill for years does make us lose weight and feel tired all the time. If we have an acute disease, we may not go to a school for a few days, But a chronic disease will reduce our ability to learn and make it difficult for us to follow what is being taught in a school. In other words, if we have a chronic disease, we are likely to have a prolonged general pure health. General pure health chronic disease therefore have a very drastic long-term effects on people's health in comparison to acute disease. Causes of disease. When we think about causes of disease, we must remember that there are many levels of such causes. Let us consider an example. Let a baby is suffering from loose motions. We can say that the cause of the loose motions is probably an infection. But the next question arises: where did the infection come from? Suppose the virus came through unclean drinking water, but many babies must have drank this unclean drinking water. So why one baby developed loose motions whereas the other babies did not? One reason might be that this baby is weak. As a result, it might be more likely to have disease. Disease when exposed to risk, while healthier babies would not. Why is the baby weak? Perhaps it is not well nourished, so lack of good nourishment becomes the second cause of the disease. Further, why is the baby not well nourished? Perhaps it is from a poor household. It is also possible. It is also possible that the baby has some genetic disorder that makes it more likely to suffer from the disease when exposed to a pathogen. Without the pathogen, the genetic disorder or the pure nourishment alone would not lead to the disease, but they become contributory causes of loose motions. Why was there no clean drinking water available for the baby? Perhaps because the public services are poor where the baby's family lives, so the lack of public services become third cause of the baby's disease. Now it is clear that all kind of diseases will have immediate causes and contributory causes. Also most diseases will have several causes rather than one single cause. Infectious and non-infectious causes. When we think about causes of disease, it is important to keep public health and community health factors in mind. We can take that approach a little further. It is useful to think of the immediate causes of disease as they belong to two distinct types. One group of causes is the infectious agents, which are mostly microbes or microorganisms. Diseases in which microbes are the immediate causes are called infectious diseases because the microbes can spread in the community and the disease will also spread with them. Some diseases are not caused by infectious agents. Their causes vary, but they are not external causes like microbes. Instead, these are mostly internal, non-effective causes. For example, high blood pressure can be caused by excessive weight and lack of exercise. Some cancers are caused by genetic abnormalities. You can think of many other diseases where the immediate causes will not be infectious. The ways for spreading diseases and the ways for their prevention and treatment at the community level would be different for different diseases. This would mainly depend on whether the immediate causes are infectious or non-infectious. Infectious diseases, infectious agents, the entire diversity seen in the living world can be classified into a few groups. This classification is based on common characteristics found in different organizations. Disease-causing organizations are found in a wide range of such categories of classification. These are virus, bacteria, fungi, single-celled animals or protozoans. Some diseases are also caused by multicellular organizations, e.g., worms or different kinds. Some examples of diseases caused by virus are the common cold called influenza, dengue, fever, and AIDS. Diseases caused by bacteria are typhoid fever, typhoid fever, skin cholera, tuberculosis, and anthrax. Many common skin infections are caused by different kinds of fungi. Protozoans cause many familiar diseases such as malaria and kala ajar. We must have come across intestinal worm infections as well as diseases like elephantiasis caused by different species of worms. These categories of infectious agents are important in deciding what kind of treatment should be used. Members of each one of these groups, I, virus, bacteria, etc., have many common biological characteristics. For example, all viruses live inside host cells, whereas bacteria very rarely do. Viruses, bacteria, and fungi multiply very quickly, whereas worms multiply very slowly in compression taxonomically. All viruses are closely related to each other than to bacteria, and vice versa. This means that many important life processes are similar in the virus group but are not shared with the bacteria group. As a result, drugs that block one of these life processes in one member of the group is likely to be effective as against other members of the group. But the same drug will not effective against a microbe belonging to a different group. Let us take antibiotics. They commonly block biochemical pathways potent for bacteria. Many bacteria make a cell wall to protect themselves. The antibiotic penicillin blocks the bacterial process that build the cell wall. Hence, the growing bacteria become unable to make cell walls and die easily. In human beings, cells don't make a cell wall, so penicillin cannot have such an effect on us. The penicillin will affect any bacteria that use such a process for making cell walls. In the same way, many antibiotics work against many species of bacteria in place of simplify working against one. But viruses do not use these pathways at all, and that is why antibiotics do not work against viral infections. If we have a common cold, taking antibiotics does not reduce the duration or the severity of the disease. However, if we also get a bacterial infection along with the viral cold, taking antibiotics will work only against the bacterial part of the infection, not the viral infection. Means of spread. Many microbial agents can move from an infected person to someone else in various ways. In other words, they can be communicated also. So the diseases caused by them are also called communicable diseases. Such a disease causing microbes can spread through the air. This occurs through the little droplets from an infected person who sneezes or coughs. Someone standing nearby can breathe in these droplets, and the microbes thus get a chance to start a new infection. Common cold, pneumonia, and tuberculosis are the examples of such diseases spread through the air. You all have had the experience of sitting near someone suffering from cold and catching it yourselves. Therefore, the more crowded our living conditions are, the more will be the chance of spreading such airborne diseases. Diseases can also be transmitted through water. This occurs if the excreta from someone suffering from an infectious get disease such as cholera get mixed with the drinking water and is used by people living nearby. The cholera causing microbes will enter a healthy person through the water and cause diseases in them. Such diseases are much more likely to spread in the areas where there is a lack of safe supplies of drinking water. The sexual act is one of the closest physical contact between two people, not separately. There are microbial infections like syphilis or AIDS that are transmitted from one partner to the other by sexual contact. However, such sexually transmitted diseases do not spread by causal physical contact. Causal physical contacts include handshakes or hugs or sports like wrestling or any other ways in which we touch each other socially. The virus causing AIDS, HIV, can also spread through blood-to-blood contact with infected people, through infected sponge, or from an infected mother to her baby during pregnancy, or through breastfeeding. We live in a society with many other creatures. It is obvious that many diseases will be transmitted by other animals. These animals carry the infecting agents from a sick person to another health host. These animals are thus the intermediaries and are known as vectors. The most common vectors are mosquitoes. In many species or mosquitoes, the females need highly nutritious food that is blood in order to be able to lay mature eggs. Mosquitoes feed on many warm-blooded animals, including us. Therefore, they can transfer diseases from person to person. Organ specific and tissue specific manifestation. The disease causing microbes enter the body through different means. The body is very large as compared to the microbes, so there are many possible places, tissues or organs where they could go. Different species or microbes seem to have a home in different parts of the body. This selection is connected to their point of entry. If they enter through air view that the nose, they are likely to go to the lungs. For example, bacteria causing tuberculosis, if they enter through the mouth, they can stay in the gut lining. For example, typhoid causing bacteria, or they can go can go to the liver as the viruses that cause jaundice. But this does not happen in all the cases. An infection like HIV that commonly enters into the body via sexual organs will spread to lymph nodes all over the body. The viruses causing Japanese encephalitis or brain fever will enter through a mosquito bite, and it goes on to infect the brain. Malaria causing microbes entering through a mosquito bite will go to the liver and then to the red blood cells. So the signs and symptoms of disease will depend on the organ or disease which the microbe targets. If the target is lungs, the symptoms will be cough and breathlessness. If target is liver, there will be jaundice. If brain is the target, then headache, vomiting, fits, or unconsciousness will be observed. We can gauge the symptoms and signs of an infection if we know the target tissues or organ and the functions carried out by each tissue or organ. In addition to these tissue specific effects of infectious diseases, there will be some other common effects too. Most of these effects depend on the fact that immune system of the body is activated in response to infections. An active immune system requires a large number of cells to the affected tissue to kill off the disease causing microbes. This requirement process is called inflammation. In this process, local effects such as swelling and pain, and general effects such as fever are seen. In some cases, the tissue specificity of the infection leads to very general seeming effects. For example, in HIV infection, the virus damages the immune system and its function. Thus, many of the effects of HIV/AIDS are because the body can no longer fight off the common minor infectious infections. Instead, every small cold can become pneumonia. Similarly, a minor gut infection can produce a major diarrhea with blood loss. Therefore, it is these other infections that kill people suffering from HIV/AIDS. The severity of a disease manifestation depends on the number of microbes present in the body. If the number of microbes is very small, the disease manifestation may be minor or unnoticed. On the other hand, if the number of microbes is large, the disease can be severe enough to be life-threatening. The immune system is a main factor that determines the number of microbes surviving in the body. We shall consider this aspect a little later in the chapter. Principles of treatment. Principles of treatment based on what we have learned so far, it would appear that there are two methods to treat an infectious disease. One is to reduce the effects of the disease, and the other is to kill off the cause of the disease. For the first, one can provide a treatment that will reduce the symptoms. For example, we can take medicines that lessen fever, reduce pain, or lose motion. So we can take bed rest to conserve our energy. This will enable us to have more energy available to focus on healing. But this kind of symptom-directed treatment will not make the infective microbes go away, and thus the disease will not be cured. For that, we need to kill off the microbes. One way is to use medicines that kill microbes. We know that microbes can be classified into different categories, such as viruses, bacteria, fungi, or protozoa. Each group of organisms will have some vital biochemical life process which is peculiar to that vital biochemical life process which is peculiar to that vital biochemical life process which is peculiar to that specific group and not shared with the other groups. This process may be the pathways for the synthesis of new substances or respiration. These pathways will not be used by us either. For example, our cells may make new substances by a mechanism which is different from that used by bacteria. We need to find a drug which blocks the bacterial synthesis pathways without affecting our own. This is achieved by the antibiotics that are familiar to us. Similarly, there are drugs that kill protozoa like malarial parasite. The main reason for why making antiviral medicines is harder than making antibacterial medicines is that they enter our cells and use our machinery for their life process. Viruses have only few biochemical mechanisms of their own. This means that there are relatively few viruses specific target to aim at. Despite this, there are no effective antiviral drugs. Antiviral drugs, for example, the drugs that keep HIV infection under control. Principles of protection. There are three limitations of this approach to get rid of an infectious disease. The first is that once someone has a disease, his body functions are damaged, which may never recover completely. Secondly, treatment will take time. Which means that patient is likely to be bedridden for some time, even if we can give a proper treatment. Thirdly, the person suffering from an infectious disease can serve as the source from where the infection may spread to other people. This results in the multiplication of the above difficulties. That is why prevention of a disease is better than their cure. There are two ways. There are two waves to prevent disease, one general and one specific to each disease. The general waves of preventing infectious infections are mostly related to preventing exposure. If we look at the means of spreading of microbes, we can prevent exposure for airborne microbes. We can prevent exposure by providing living conditions which are not overcrowded for waterborne microbes. We can prevent exposure by ensuring safe drinking water. This can be done by treating the water to remove any microbial contamination. For vector-borne infections, we can provide clean environments which would not allow mosquito breeding. In other words, public hygiene is one basic key for the prevention of infectious diseases. Along with these issues that related to the environment, there are some other common principles to prevent infectious diseases. Normally, if someone is suffering from a cold and cough in the class, all children sitting there do not actually suffer from the disease because the immune system of our body is normally fighting off microbes. We have cells that are specialized in killing infective microbes. These cells go into action each time against infective microbes entering the body. If they are successful, we do not suffer. The immune cells manage to kill off the infection long before it acquires major proportions. In other words, becoming exposed to or infected with an infectious microbe does not necessarily mean developing noticeable disease. The functioning of the immune system, like any other system in our body, will not be good if proper and sufficient nourishment and food is not available. Hence, the second basic principle of prevention of infectious diseases is the availability of balanced and sufficient food for everyone. These are the common ways of preventing infections, whereas a specific ways related to a cellular property of the immune system that usually parts of microbial infections. See this example to try and understand this property. Nowadays, there is no smallpox anywhere in the world, but 100 years ago, smallpox epidemics were not all at all uncommon. People used to be very afraid of coming near someone suffering from the disease because they were afraid of catching the disease. Despite this situation, there was one group of people who did not have this fear. These people would provide nursing care for the victims of smallpox. These people had had smallpox earlier and survived it. In other words, if you had smallpox once, there was no chance of catching it again. So having the disease once was a means of preventing further attacks of the same disease. This happens because when the immune system sends an infectious microbe first time, it responds against it and then remembers it specifically. So when that particular microbe or its close relatives enter the body again, the immune system responds with even more vigor. This eliminates the infection even more quickly than the first time attack. This is the basis of the principle of immunity. Hence, as a general principle, we can fool the immune system by developing a memory for a particular infection by putting something inside the body that mimics the microbe we want to vaccinate against. This does not actually cause the disease, but this would prevent further exposure to the infective microbe from turning into actual disease. Many such vaccines are now available for preventing a number of infectious diseases and provide a disease a specific means of prevention. There are vaccines against tetanus, measles, polio, diphtheria, whooping cough, and many others. These vaccines are given to children during the public health programming of childhood immunization for preventing infectious diseases. Of course, such programs can be useful only if such health measures are made available to all children. Some hepatitis viruses which cause jaundice are spread through water. There is a vaccine for one of them, hepatitis A, in the market, but the majority of children in many parts of India are already immune to hepatitis A by the time they are 5 years old, since they are exposed to the various viruses through water. Despite these circumstances, hepatitis A vaccines should be taken.